Hi, this is Bill with Farland Classic Restoration in Denver. We're doing another walk around on one of our cars. Today, it's a 1992 Ferrari 348 TS. TS means spider, which means that the roof comes off. The 348 was one of Ferrari's landmark cars. It followed the 308 and 328 series that everybody's familiar with. But this car was virtually a clean sheet of paper after those cars. The entire body structure is different. The wheelbase, the track, everything was changed in this car to get better handling and better performance. The Testarossa that preceded the car was also a landmark car, and it preceded with all of these styling cues that this car is famous for. The strakes on the doors, all the horizontal lines on the car are part of its styling package, which is why it's so different from those two earlier models. It's a 3.4 liter engine with 300 horsepower. The earlier 3 Series Ferraris had anywhere from 2.25 to 250 horsepower, so it's substantially more powerful, performs substantially better. Okay, now that we're here toward the back of the car, I'll try to illustrate some of these promises that I was making earlier. It's pretty obvious the car is substantially wider than the earlier 3 Series Ferraris. That naturally makes the car much more stable in corners. And the big difference is, if you notice how low the engine is sitting in here. Now we're just looking at the very top of the intake plenum. The engine itself is down here. In those earlier Ferraris, the engine actually sat on top of the transaxle. In this car, the transaxle sits behind it. They were able to drop the engine almost 7 inches, and we all understand what that does to center of gravity. So the handling performance of this car is dramatically better than a 308 or a 328, plus you have the added horsepower. The 348 also came along when all auto manufacturers were beginning to get more electronics into their cars. And for Ferrari, that was a big step. It has electronic climate control, electronic processing for the emission system. It's a more sophisticated car than the 308 and the 328 was. And again, while we're back here, you can see once again that theme of horizontal lines, which is unique to this car and the Testarossa. Now, let's have a look inside. The next large technological change with the 348 was the complete redesign of the car's cooling system. The earlier cars had the radiator up in the front like a conventional car does. They plumbed all that 200-degree water down through the rocker panels and basically through the interior to the back of the car where the engine was. Naturally, that made the interior a little warm in the summer and gave the air conditioning quite a task to overcome. This car, on the other hand, has the radiators in each quarter panel. You can see the air intake there, which is why the car has those horizontal strakes in the doors. Air is directed down the side of the car into that duct, and a radiator stands vertically on each side right there. This prevents hot water from having to be plumbed through the car. It gets more weight right by the wheels, and it's an altogether more satisfactory situation. Inside, things are pretty standard Ferrari in here. The all-black dash with full instrumentation, the contoured bucket seats with really pronounced bolsters to hold you in place during cornering. And as this car, as we mentioned, was the TS version, it has this roof panel that comes off and stores vertically behind the seats, just like the 328s did as well. But the interior is considerably wider. You have more room in the car. The air conditioning is better in these, as I mentioned, and of course it has that stereotypical Ferrari exposed gate shifter. The final difference on the 348 compared to the earlier cars is it has a single trunk up in the front instead of the 2 little separate trunks that those other cars had, which included one back by the engine, so everything in there got 200 degrees as well. This trunk stays relatively cool. Everything is clean in here. We have the leather toolkit that Ferrari provides for their cars. And you'll note this particular one has a car cover that comes with it. and a binder in there with the service records and the maintenance history of this car. The last thing that I wanted to mention was that the 348 has a really big advantage over those earlier ones because through the mysteries of the marketplace, these cars, 348s, are selling for less money than 328s do, or 308s, even though they have all these technical advantages that I've just mentioned. So a person can save money, have a more sophisticated car, and I haven't talked much about this particular car, but it has a very clean history. It's a late generation, which has a lot of design improvements that were done during the production of the 348s. To wrap up our presentation on 348s in general, let's talk about this car in particular. It's a 1992 model. These cars were first built in '89. They went out of production in '94. Ferrari always gradually improves their model during the production run. And remember my comments about there's so much new technology in this car. Those first couple of years really did have some teething issues, and all other things being equal, it's not a bad idea to stay away from the early ones, the '89s, the '90s, even some of the '91s. The big thing was the design of the rear suspension made those early cars kind of twitchy when being driven fast or at track events. Ferrari completely redesigned that sometime in calendar year 1991. So late 91s and all the newer ones handle substantially better. This particular car is a stereotype. Red exterior, tan interior, what everybody always looks for in Ferraris. 29,000 miles, so nobody wants a high mileage Ferrari, so that's very attractive here. And this car has a perfectly clean Carfax history, no accidents in its background. This is all the original paint. It's not been painted on anywhere. We've had it up on a lift. We've inspected it underneath for any signs of rough treatment or damage, and there's none of that. So if a person is looking for a really fun Ferrari driving experience at what I consider to be in a bargain price range, it's kind of hard to beat a good 348, and this isn't a good one, this is a great one. So, terrific car, terrific engineering, and we would love to have the opportunity to discuss it with you or any of our other fine cars here. Thank you.